Okay, so welcome to the first session of Skull Sessions, where we talk about Secret World stuff. Today we have Molov over this way, and I'm Jimmy the Rabbit,
Hi.
and we're talking mostly about stuff to do with the Rebalance patch that's upcoming. It's currently in open beta, ending August 3rd. And I think, do we just want to jump into queues? Or the nightmare mechanics being shifted and the queues? Jump into that one?
Um, Meaning topic about dungeons in general, right? Rebalance of dungeons
Sure.
and rework of dungeons a little bit. Yeah,
Yep.
let's go.
Let's go. So the first thing, and here I'll actually switch to see the game for this, so that we can see the actual tiers on the screen. So the first thing is that elite tiers, instead of 1 through 10, are now, the elite levels go up to elite 17, but there's actually less tiers. There's 7 tiers now instead of 10. So there's actually been a consolidation of number of tiers you can queue for. And the elite levels have been combined in the tiers. And rather than nightmare mechanics starting at E5, which was tier 5, they still start at tier 5, but tier 5 is now elite 11. And the way the tiers
Pretty
work
much.
is the difficulty of that tier is the lowest number, and the loot of the tier is the highest number. So if you're doing an E5 to 7 tier, the difficulty is E5, the loot is E7.
Very generous.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people thinking they're going to need to grind up a bunch of stuff, or there's going to be this huge grind after the patch comes out, are not grasping the changes to the system fully.
Yep.
But we had talked before recording that there was some concern about the nightmare mechanics being moved to 11 as opposed to 5.
Yeah, my main concern personally about this is that even with the fact that the grind becomes faster, people don't know how much faster yet, but it's gonna be faster. The change to nightmare mechanics still happens pretty late. That means people are gonna run with like pre nightmare mechanics, which I'm not gonna lie, will be kind of boring. That's one of the issues. But I mean, I guess at this point, the intention, Funcom's intention about dungeons was to make them accessible to any groups of people queuing with the dungeon finder, right? But still, I would have appreciated maybe two different additions of mechanics throughout all the tiers. You know, like nightmare mechanic maybe being added at elite 5 to 7, like before, a bit earlier. You know, and then second nightmare mechanic maybe added at 11, elite 11 and further. Because as I see things right now, from our test from E17 and well the highest elites, some people, well, I mean, actually many people were saying that dungeons are kind of easy. Well, I mean, that's not a bad thing necessarily, but I feel like mainly tanks and healers can maybe get a bit more job without necessarily making it inaccessible to, you know, to people in random groups, without making it too hard, but by still adding something a little bit, you know.
We're just saying it feels like there's a lack of challenge at the higher end.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's you know, I think there is little room to add little something without like traumatizing everyone. You know?
I would say, and this is only one, and even a mini dungeon at that. And I know the returning content's like another topic, but I think the penthouse dungeon fills a little bit of that role.
Exactly. That's also why I'm getting there, because the penthouse by itself has more mechanics than the other dungeons right
Right.
now.
If you get penthouse
Yep.
E17, like
Yeah.
that is a real test. I think you are
Yep.
right in the sense that no other E17 dungeon really requires that same amount of work.
Yep. This is why here I prepared a little list of maybe some suggestions, some ideas about introducing like a second nightmare mechanic from Elite 11 and upwards. That like I've already put this little list in the on the forums, in the on the beta feedback forums.
Right, right.
But I thought you might be a good idea to also kind of talk about them a little bit. So I went from five dungeons. Each one of them had like, how can I say, a theme. Back in TSW at least, for example, Polaris had like hard-hitting bosses with more penetration rating, etc.
Right, right.
So for Polaris, my idea was to introduce crit rating on bosses with little bit more crit power, obviously. So this dungeon kind of becomes more of a tank check than other dungeons, for example.
Okay, okay.
Tank plus healer check, obviously, because those work together now. So this would be like the dungeon where single target damage taken to tanks will be the highest, and well, mechanically this will be the addition. Like every boss can, whether crits are random or happen through abilities, new abilities, that remains to be seen. But that's one of the ideas I had. For Hell Raised. Oh, you found the post. Nice one.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for
I put that up.
Hellraised, basically the theme is life burn. Not all bosses have it, but some have it. And one of the ideas I had is that why not just making all the bosses put life burn and put it constantly, like every maybe 2 or 3 seconds, boom, one stack on everyone, and the healer has to heal, until the stacks are too high, and then boom, you cleanse, and then you heal up again. Well, obviously then comes balance. You don't want to make the mechanic too hard, because dungeons still need to be accessible, of course,
Wouldn't it
but
be more?
at least this will be like a test for healers in terms of group healing. Some variety, some
Yeah.
some different work on this one.
I mean, I guess
um,
you could do something similar to penthouse as far as like the corrupted mechanic, right? It's like sort of random and oftentimes random on two people. You could do like you know random life burn on two people or something as opposed to the whole group. I feel like if it's the whole group all the time, you're just gonna piss
maybe
healers off.
maybe, but then it all depends on the damage. Like design first, for example, and then the balance can come later. You just tweak the damage a little bit here and
Sure,
there.
sure.
Or you can, as you said, indeed make it like spawn on 2 people or 3 people instead of all people. That's also fine. The Ankh. What did I write there in Ankh?
Randomly spawning moats that
I
attach to
want this.
someone.
I want this. So basically, yeah, the Ankh is every boss. As soon as you enter combat, uh, some mods randomly spawn on someone and attach to them. Just like the first boss when someone gets modded by walking into the mods, right? And like don't make them have too much life. Like maybe one basic or two should be enough to get rid of them. But I think this could be a nice test for DPS. So they actually look around them, instead of just tunnel visioning the bosses.
Right,
Look
right.
around them. They check their mates, or they just like create tactics, like they group up together in a crystallized blaze or something. Different ways to manage this, and it adds a little bit of something fun, to do other than just tunnel visioning bosses. It kind of fits the Ankh. So like mods everywhere, it could kind of be
Yeah,
funny, in my
yeah.
opinion. Next, Hell Eternal. Well, Hell Eternal, yeah. In TSW, you remember the lenses on boss 2 in Eblis? Those used to hurt. I remember that those used to really hurt.
You know what's
Uh,
weird about that? I'm fair. It's been a while. I'm fairly certain they they worked really weird in Nightmare. So I think in Elite they didn't hurt, and in Nightmare they did hurt, but
No, I think it was
but
actually the other way. Yeah.
in Nightmare I think they did hurt you, but in Elite you couldn't damage the boss. Whereas in Nightmare, if you're
Yeah.
shooting the reflex shield, it actually damage boosted you. So the meta was just heal through it and burst them down because you get so much of a damage boost off of shooting the shield.
Actually,
Specifically in Hell Eternal, at least.
I think in Elite, the fun fact is that if my memory is right, in Elite in TSW, the lens actually used to almost one-shot you because the reflex were super hard. Like the Elite version
Yeah,
of the
the
lens,
Elite was
if I
harder.
remember, was harder than the
Yes,
Nightmare.
yes,
But
it
still,
was.
what I mean is that I think they really should make the lenses reflect damage now, especially now that we actually have healers.
Right, right.
So so here the work is like on the healer and on the DPS as well in case they get too low. They have to control themselves. They have to stop DPSing for like a second or two if the healer is in trouble. I think that's kind of cool. Uh, and then I said, why not make all bosses lens themselves? Why not? Or maybe like more, not all, but maybe like more of them than currently. I don't know. Just an idea.
Right, right.
And the last one, Darkness. Well, Polaris is the last, but I've already
But you started
discussed
with
Polaris.
Polaris, so
Yeah,
yeah.
Darkness Wars. Darkness Wars. This is the one that was kinda I don't know. Like I submitted the random idea, but I really don't know what to say about like in terms of mechanic to add to this.
Yeah,
It's kind of hard to say.
because yeah, you're right. The theme of the dungeon is ads, but more
Already
ads is
ads, like that's
not
fine.
necessarily
Yeah,
good.
yeah. There are already ads. Like ads I have on every boss in this dungeon. That's fine. That's already kind of you know.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. I don't know. I mean, well, could add either some. Well, I mean, in terms of dungeons which provide like group healing, I've already submitted ideas. Tank single target healing, Polaris. Maybe some like mechanics that are designed more for DPS this time again, just like in Ankh, maybe. Something that happens for DPS. I don't know. Something like that. Maybe some ads that have different color and that you shouldn't DPS, otherwise they like, you know. Some ads you should kill and some ads you shouldn't. Something like that. I don't know. Could be funny.
I
Maybe that's too
mean,
hard though. Maybe that's too hard. I don't know.
you could do like a boss ad, like you have to kill the boss ad first, kind of like Titans in the raid. You know, like if you don't
That
kill the
might be a
boss
bit
ad first,
chaotic.
he'll start resurrecting the other ads. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
That could work for Darkness War. That would make you prioritize target.
Might be too hard though. Might be too hard.
I mean, it depends how quickly it reses ads and how many it reses at a time, right?
Yeah.
Like, but I could imagine that being something that sort of fits with the whole Mayan like they look like zombies thing. Is like you have like a chieftain that can raise them, and maybe you can interrupt his cast or something. But you know what I mean? Like rather than putting more ads in the field, just the danger of the
Yeah.
ads coming back.
Also, one of the ideas, well, not now that we're done with this list, one of the ideas that I had is a crossover between dungeons and itemization. We have one item slot of talisman, which is the finger, which is kind of not very popular because you don't really proc it that often in group content.
Right.
And I feel like this could maybe be improved upon. Like in Darkness Wars, we have bosses that cast buffs on themselves. That's nice. You can actually purge them. You can proc your ring. Why not making them more frequent? Because basically those bosses buff their damage. Make it more frequent so people can purge more often. Or maybe like make bosses cast things more often so that people can interrupt more often. Something like that.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That could also improve the mechanics, like make them a bit harder, and at the same time
give you
Like
benefits even
make
running
the
the stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
make the finger slots more relevant for DPS and maybe for tanks to interrupt, to purge, to whatever, you know.
I mean, I
That
certainly
was just
like.
an idea
In
thrown like
general, I
that.
like the idea of more mechanics. I don't know. Um. So, kind of before we started this, I wasn't really sure until I got in the game and looked at it, but I think there's like a weird mental thing where people think like, oh, you've moved nightmare mechanics from E5 to E11. People are going to be playing the game so much longer without nightmare mechanics, right? But that's
Hmm?
not really true. The tiers, right? It's not like there is. It's not like there's 10 tiers of dungeons anymore for E1 to 10. There's actually only 5. So if you think about it, after the balance patch, you will play the same amount of content without nightmare mechanics as you did before the balance patch. Right?
If you assume that now the gear progression would be twice as fast due to distillates and stuff, sure, that's right.
Well,
But
not just that, but think about it. On live, you queue for E1s until you can queue for E2s, until you can queue for E3s, right?
yes,
It's 5 tiers of queuing before you get to nightmare mechanics. It's the same after the rebalance, right?
yeah, true.
It's
Mhm.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tiers of queuing before you. So there's this misconception that like, oh, it's like, it's not like if you went E1 to 10 without nightmare mechanics pre-patch. That's not like that at all. It's 5 tiers. So the I think the E numbers, the E like 1 to 2, 3 to 4 are actually confusing the issue because realistically
Maybe.
it's actually the same amount, and like it's the same amount of time in a queue as before you hit nightmare mechanics, right?
Sure,
It's
but
just the loot and difficulty has been kind of combined,
yeah,
and I would actually potentially argue, given the new difficulty and loot distribution, that a brand new player after the patch might hit nightmare mechanics faster than a player before the patch.
that's possible.
Think about how long it takes you to level from E1 to E5, right? In the current
Too long.
in the current thing. Now look at what even like on E1s you're getting E2 loot, on E3s you're getting E4 loot, on E5s you're getting E7 loot. I think a new person might actually hit nightmare mechanics in less hours of play potentially. I haven't done the math, but I mean just it feels like it's possible you might actually hit nightmare mechanics faster after the patch than people do now. I think there's this misconception that like because the queue name says E11 that you will have played 10 tiers of content before you get to nightmare mechanics, and that's not true. You'll have played
My
4
main point
tiers of
that
content.
yeah, regardless of how long it takes to reach the nightmare mechanics, maybe even faster than now that you'd reach E5 now, I think it's still kind of too long though. Like if you introduce a second tier of nightmare
I
mechanics, as
agree.
I said, I
I
think
would say I agree.
it's just too long overall. Like regardless of the misconception of the the elite numbers,
Right,
that's
right.
like I don't really care about that. That's just numbers, you know. But
Well,
I'd still love to see like a
it
new
is
tier of
numbers,
nightmare
but I
mechanics.
feel
Yeah,
it's kind of like saying on live, I would like to see nightmare mechanics on E3 instead of E5.
and that's true. I'd also like that. Yeah,
Right. Well, I mean,
pretty
but
much.
that's fair. But I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
it's important, especially in the what we're talking about,
yeah, true.
to analyze it correctly and go like, well, actually, you're playing the same amount of tiers without new mechanics as you do now. So
Yep.
effectively, they changed nothing in that regard. In fact, they might have just relabeled the stuff. And that's one reason it's at E11 is the 5th tier has nightmare mechanics. It probably was just simpler to leave it that
Yeah,
way.
like move the IP, you know, the IP brackets, just move them, relabel
Yeah,
them.
they
Yeah,
just. But it's
I
literally the
guess.
same tier has the mechanics
Yeah,
code.
true.
It might
Anyway,
just be lazy.
Yeah. Well, anyway, those
or
are
intended, because it's like I said, it still matches. But I would agree, just from playing the game, from launch, it was a long time E1 E5 before you get nightmare mechanics, and by that point,
Yeah.
yeah, you're like, for the love of crap, give me something harder to do. This is just more of the same. So I would say so you have to assume if you put nightmare mechanics on the E5 to 7 tier, it's like putting nightmare mechanics on E3.
Makes sense.
Now that said, if they're like, we don't have access to their player data, like maybe people at E3 just like not all people, but maybe a large percentage are not ready for nightmare mechanics at E3. Maybe some people are slow learners. I don't know. Like, I don't have that.
They aren't that hard. I guess you can't really know if they're ready or not if you don't try, can you? I don't know.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean,
Or
I've seen
you
people.
can start.
I've
Sorry,
seen people
go.
in E8s and E9s that didn't understand the nightmare mechanics, and they were in E8s and E9s. So it's hard to say. But what I will say is this: I do agree that it feels like we need, at least for the E7. Like, let's say that Funcom's stance was, no, our data shows people need like 4 tiers of this stuff before they're remotely ready for more complicated things. Let's even say that was true, right? I would still argue that E17 needs new things. At the bare minimum, you could leave the Nightmare at E11, and you should have like Nightmare Plus at E17.
Yes.
Right? Do a new layer like at E17.
I'll take that. Yep. Pretty much.
Because even the most glaring thing being, if you queue for E17 randomly and you get the penthouse dungeon, it's automatically like, oh shit, now I have to work. They
have to kind of line up other dungeons to these standards because, like, that's what we said. Indeed.
I think when it goes live, you're gonna see 2 things happen. You're gonna see groups that hit penthouse dungeon and auto vote retreat.
Like HR right now. Yep, new HR, let's go.
Exactly. You're gonna see that, and then number 2 is you're gonna see the opposite. You're gonna see groups vote retreat out of everything, and they just want to get to penthouse because they want a challenge. Not to mention that because the penthouse has 3 bosses instead of 6, the last loot chest has been buffed. So if you're a competent team, I think potentially if you can queue for a penthouse, you actually get a better return for your time. Assuming it doesn't take you 10 wipes to beat the encounter, you're actually going to get well rewarded if you're actually.
Now
good
that
at
I
it.
think about it, one of the things that I'd like to see that would be more player friendly is the possibility to choose your own dungeon when you're in a private group. I'd like that.
Yeah. Well, that's actually a good point.
Always wanted that, and like for
I
group
know
finder, dungeons being random, that's okay, I guess. If like you're queuing up completely randomly, can leave it there like that.
Well,
but like
you
if
know
in
what
a private
the difference
group,
was? In TSW, you had the group finder, but you could go to the portal.
Yep.
And that's how you entered as a private group. You went to the portal. We don't have dungeon portals anymore.
Yeah.
I wonder if that could potentially be fixed just by adding dungeon portals. Well, if you think about it, right, we have the leets. Here, I'm gonna actually show this because I think it's funny.
You can just create sub menus in the queues.
Well, I mean, the queue system
something
is
like that,
the queue system is, from my understanding, a crazy mess. And I don't know, even though it seems easy to add tiers, I think it would make more sense. Like, look, in test, we can click these little leets and go directly as a private group into penthouse E whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's something we can do. So,
I mean, I'm also all about adding the old Agartha branches. Give them back. I love them.
I mean, actually, you
Traveling to
have
branches and
most of them exist. They're just over there.
yeah, they're empty.
But I mean, can you like? I could imagine like a platform, right?
Hmm?
Where you just had portals to the dungeons,
Yeah.
and you enter the port. Like you can't queue for it. You private group, you enter the portal, and then you pick, just like going into Dark Agartha. As you walk into the portal, you pick the E difficulty, right? Rather than
Yeah.
having like 5 portals for a dungeon, you have 1 portal for each dungeon, and then you just walk into it and pick your difficulty. I think that would be amazing. I don't think they're ever gonna let you do it from the queue, because that sort of invalidates their purpose of the queue, which is to, I mean, they intentionally want to randomize the content and not let you pick one. That they've kind of been a little bit outspoken about this before, or at least I've talked with developers on the side as well, and they've said that the intent is for you to not pick. The intent is so that groups don't just run, Polaris nonstop, right? That's on purpose.
I don't see a big issue in this though. Like some groups are crazy and only want one dungeon. Let them just play. I don't know.
I think for the randomizer thing, it causes things they don't want. But I agree. I don't see a problem with letting private groups do it. Right?
Yeah.
So if you're pugging for a dungeon, then okay, you can't pick. That's fine.
Yeah.
But if you have a group and you're specifically trying to do something, it would make sense to have a way to just not have to vote retreat 10 times. Because to be honest, we do it anyways. It's just more annoying. Why would you not want to make our life a little easier?
Exactly.
Especially like achievements, right? E10 achievements. Someone needs a specific E10 dungeon completed for an achievement. You get a group together to do it, and now you spend 20 minutes vote retreating to get to the right dungeon to help them with the achievement. Like it's
pretty much
counterproductive. I think both to the player and to the company.
Anyway, next, what do we have? Next topic.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that was a pretty good coverage of queues. Do you want to look at? You know what? Actually, here, this would be a good one since we're talking about it anyways. Content Redux. So
What's
old content coming back.
Oh yeah.
Which we talked about Penthouse Dungeon, talking about the queues.
Yep.
Which
It's something to say about this. Well, to begin with, I mean, it becomes kind of obvious at this point that all these systems in the back end have been worked on, so that the game is kind of quote unquote ready now to get the old content back, which hasn't been ported yet, right? Like
at least
it made
it seems
sense
like
to
it's trending
first
that way. Yeah.
Yeah, it made more sense first to create proper queues, proper tiers of elites up to Elite 17
and
for everyone, for every gear.
Proper scaling. The dungeon
exactly.
scaling got completely. It's a new system, in my understanding.
It made more sense to actually do this first, these systems, to standardize the loot, the rewards, everything, to rebalance tanking and healing as well. Of course, that's kind of important. And then to maybe eventually, follow this up with the old dungeons and raids. That's what at least I hope for.
I mean, the Penthouse Dungeon at least gives you an inkling that that's their idea, right?
For me, Penthouse is basically proof of concept. Can we release an old dungeon back? How easy, how hard it is. And it's an Aegis dungeon, so it's supposed to be harder. How can we do this? Boom, let's go. That's how I see it, and I'm very happy with that.
I'm super happy with it because I think it was arguably probably the hardest Asian dungeon for most groups, even though it was Smallest. People. Well, I
Possible.
mean, also it didn't. Okay, to be fair, it also didn't give you anything worth playing the dungeon for, other than the achievement at the time. Other than the achievement of it, the replay value of it, unfortunately, TSW was really poor because the rewards it gave out were god awful.
Yep.
Would you like a locked blade of red Aegis damage only stuck at 10.2? It's like the shit I beat the dungeon with is better than that.
The only thing they were giving were, if my memory is correct, blue I guess whatever it was called, capacitors. No.
Did it? I didn't even think it gave that.
No, you could upgrade your 1.9 greens to 2.0 blues.
From Penthouse?
Yeah.
Okay.
Then they put the same in manufactory, but that was later, But first Penthouse could allow you to push your Aegis gear to blue. I remember.
Right.
That's it.
But as soon as the manufactured dungeons came out, like pretty much no one wanted to touch Penthouse with a 10-foot pole unless they were helping someone get the achievement.
Yep. And
which is sad because mechanically it's an amazing dungeon.
Yep. Indeed. And so what I was thinking about in terms of like old dungeons and raids, what I would like is maybe like release them not in a good like big bunch together, but like 1 by 1 or 2 by 2 progressively, Like if they can make like a dungeon or a raid or two every 2 or 3 months, instead of like spending a year or I don't know 6 months or whatever, bringing back all the dungeons at the same time, that would be nice. And
you're speaking about the
that
other non-Aegis dungeons now as well, right? You're talking about like
all of the dungeons that I'm missing.
Right, gotcha. I honestly, I think potentially that things like Hell Fallen, like Nightmare, might, and this is just my opinion, but I think those might actually be more difficult to port than say like Manufactory.
Hard to say.
Because that code is ancient. Like no one ever fixed the Hellfallen bugs, right? The Hellfallen Nightmare bugs were many, and in the entire run of TSW they were never fixed. And from all interactions with devs, Hellfallen Nightmare code is like spaghetti madness, right? Whereas the Manufactory dungeons are newer.
True.
Right, they were not code made in like 2010 or 2012. That's newer code. Hopefully those guys learn from the mistakes of the past, right? Now, granted, the Aegis has to change, and that requires reworking. But I almost, if the base is better and not a mangled mess like Hellfallen is, it might actually be faster to port, Manufactory and Manufactory Breached than to port like Hellfallen Nightmare. I'm not saying that they shouldn't port Hellfallen Nightmare. I'm just saying as far as like time they have to spend fixing it. The impression I got from Nervel was essentially they would have to gut Hellfallen and start over.
Or you know what? Yeah, just do that. Like there's a one boss that is spaghetti. Imagine the last one, okay? Just remake it from scratch. Why not? They know how to make bosses. They know how to make spells. They're very good at that. Just make it again from scratch.
I think
make
you
it
have to redo
completely
boss 2 as
different.
well.
Like transform it. Like create it something completely different than what we knew. Why not? We'll take it, right?
I think you have to remake boss 2 as well.
Yeah, sure. It was just an example, I'm talking
no, I'm just thinking. So some things have to be changed because they're broken. Some things have to be changed for Legends because I don't think boss 2 works. Nightmare in Legends with what we have available and the reticle system.
Okay.
That, like, the number of targets you have to be able to like snap and pair on a dime, and then what if something's standing in front of it in the reticle, like you can't, you know what I mean? Like,
although I mean they're kind of big,
Well, that's a
They're
problem
fat.
though. What if you need to impair the Jin and the big machine tyrant's like there and his hitbox is there and your reticle can't, and you know what I'm saying? It's like the lurker
you,
problem all over again.
you AoE it with something
AoE
eruption or
impair?
whatever. Yeah,
I mean, I guess maybe.
everything's possible.
I,
I
I
mean,
I think though. I mean, if you if you think about how like things like Hell Eternal were changed, lots of those fights were redone, and
mm,
visually they don't look much different to existing players, but mechanically they're way different. And the
true.
reason is because of like the reticle interface and because of the other limitations as far as like not everyone can slot as much stuff to deal with as many things, right? So it's balanced around what the player is capable of, or what the group is capable of, I should say. But like the Hell Eternal boss 4 is way different. It doesn't look visually much different, but mechanically it's different. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
if
Yep,
you're
yep,
not paying
yep,
attention
yep.
and you run in,
Yes.
especially as a DPS, you're like, I'm shooting her. There's dogs. We run. It's similar, but mechanically it's way
Yeah, yeah,
different.
yeah. True. Yeah. Another thing that I've been thinking about is personally, I'd like the two missing raids to actually come first. Can
Before
tell
the
you why.
dungeons.
Yes, can tell you why. To me, the 10-man raids are the key factors, way more than dungeons. The raids are the key factors that create communities together around them.
Okay.
The raids are what makes cabals, groups of people play together weekly. The raids are what makes people challenge themselves and basically thrive for, like when you gear up for something,
Sure. No, I
you
100%
have a
agree.
goal. Yeah, you have a goal at the end, be able to like gear up to be able to enter that raid and complete the raid with people. And I mean, myself as well as you, I guess, for like it's been years that we've been doing New York E10 weekly.
Yeah, and I can tell
Like
you, people
our
don't log
group,
in to do a dungeon.
exactly,
No
pretty
one
much
logs in to do a
exactly.
dungeon. They'll
It's the
log in
same for
every
us.
week for 3 years to do the raid, but no one's logging in every day to do a dungeon.
Exactly. This
No, I
is why
agree.
I'd like to like instead of just having one raid that it takes you like 50 minutes to complete. That's cool. We've got the E17 raid. It'll take longer than 50 minutes probably to complete. That's a good start.
Right, right.
Now if we got the old raids back, like right now before everything else, man, it would be so cool. And yeah, the other thing might be I was thinking that maybe you could reduce the cooldown of the raids to like half a week instead of 1 week or like 5 days. I don't know, something like that. But at least,
I'm personally yes and no about. I mean, look, I think a lot of people would like to be able to run it more often. Personally, as someone that is running a cabal and ran a cabal in TSW when you could do them daily, I thank God
yeah,
every day that you can't do this one daily, because then people would
true,
want to,
true,
and I think the burnout factor is a lot higher,
true.
because
Yeah,
especially for like progression minded groups, right? You're like every day, every day, every day, and inevitably you end up with like, what am I going to do with this loop? Not doing anything, and then people just burn
mm,
faster. I think the once a week does help like keep people engaged, but from just because you can't stop those people from burning themselves out. Nothing you're gonna tell
mm,
them is gonna make them stop running it if it's available to run. That
yeah,
type of personality, those type of groups of which I've been a part of and have one, like you just kind of go wherever the wall is, you're gonna hit it. You know what I mean? Um,
yeah.
so I appreciate that there's sort of like a sanity check in the game. Um, I do kind of wish that the E levels loot was at least different. Like if I
Mm,
want to run E5 and get E5 loot and then run E10 and get E10 loot, why can't I do that? Right?
yeah, true. Mm,
Like I feel like, and like especially like we don't even know, right? Like is E17 going to be locked into the same tier as E1 and E5 and 10?
I think so. I'm not
Because
sure,
right
but
now we have story mode loot, right? And then we have the elite tier loot.
I can't stand that. Like, we have to go to story mode just because we like the distillates are still worth going for.
They are
You have
actually.
to go
That's
to
the
story
crazy
mode.
thing is they're still actually good loot the first time round.
Like I don't know. I don't understand why they just don't fuse the distillates into E17 or E10 or whatever you're doing, to combine them so you don't have to run to queue into story mode when you are doing like E10.
Oh, you
What
mean
Nirvel
like
said. The reason that Nirvel said was that like the game needs story mode to pop in the queue, but that's like I don't believe this. I don't believe this explanation. Like we do E10 raids. We don't
or
bug
just solo
randomly
it.
story mods. Nobody does that.
Just solo the story mode.
Yeah, like nobody bugs
No
story
one,
mods
like,
when
who
you do
pugs story
E10s.
mode?
Oh yeah.
I mean, okay, if
that's
we
why
do,
I don't believe it.
anytime I've pugged story mode raid, it's been not the actual group finder, but like in looking for group. Anyone want a free story mode? I'm gonna run it solo anyways.
Yeah, that's
right?
fine.
And then I'll bring people, but that's still not using the activity finder. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I
we
think
agree.
it feels like the reward lockout should be separate. At the very least, E17's got to be separate from like, you know, I don't know, like E1 and E5 or something. Like that's crazy. It's crazy to me that like.
I had a different idea for the loot in terms of distillates only, not items, just distillates. Okay. If you do E17, you get story mode plus E1 plus E5 plus E10 plus the extra for E17. Boom, together. So you don't need to get back to story mode after that. So you basically get all the tiers in terms of distillates fused into one, into the highest. So like if you do E10 first in the week, okay, to help some people, you get story E1, E5, E10. Then you can go to E17 and get what you're missing from E17 minus what you've got already up to E10, you know, in terms of distillates. Maybe it's kind of hard to, you know, technically to make, but, you know, that was one of my ideas.
But I wonder if their aversion to that would be that essentially you would essentially be getting the loot for not the same time investment.
That's the thing. I mean, the people who are like high end who do E17, they should just get better loot immediately and invest less time.
But you do get better.
What's the point of running? Yeah, true, but
you get better loot. But what I mean is, if you just got all the loot if you got all the loot from the other tiers as well, you got so much more for doing. I mean, granted, most people aren't gonna one shot it, but you know what I mean. Like 10 minutes. For 10 minutes of successful play time, you got your loot and all those loot. I'm not
just
sure.
rework the existing instead of 17k distillates in E10, right? Just reduce them a bit. So the end result is more or less the same.
I see what you mean.
Or you know, rebalance the numbers. That's just numbers. Those can be retweaked. As
I see what you're saying. So really, what you're saying is that actually, I think if I understand what you're saying, then you actually would be getting, at the end of the day, less loot potential.
Why is that? Oh, you mean in terms of items or in terms of what?
No, even in terms of distillates. If you balance it in such a way that like the E17 loot includes all the other ones as distillates, but it's still
if you didn't already get them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. But it's still a set capped amount, right? And so every tier is a little bit less, so that when you do get them all together, it's not like crazy overpowered. That leaves you at the end of the day with actually an opportunity to get less distillate than if you just went and ran, you know, like story and 17, because then you actually get 17 and the other one. You know what I'm saying? If you have to level the distillates out, which would make sense, you'd have to kind of squish them down a little bit so it doesn't get insane. Then potentially you actually end up at the end of the day with less distillate than if you because you're right, you do, as a E17 one, you're like, fuck, I have to go do story mode, like that sucks.
Yeah, it's annoying.
But at the same time, you got reward for the time you invested in story mode. Let's say it takes you like 5 minutes, right? You
but
did
the
get
thing is that
reward for it. I'm saying reward versus time instead of reward versus effort, right?
But there is no effort there, so it's kind of boring.
The effort is in the time. That's my point.
Yeah, but that's not playing the game. That's just like, you know.
It is just playing the game.
No, that's that's not fighting. That's not challenging yourselves. You know. That's
yeah, but
just
you can't AFK.
Having to queue.
You potentially can still die. Sort of. That can happen. Trust me.
I mean, well.
You can AFK into a exploding flappy in story mode and still die. It's possible.
Let's say, for example, okay, let's say whatever they have in Elite 1, okay, they have like 6k, 7k distance. I don't know, doesn't matter. Story mode gives 5k, okay? Someone who goes in E1, boom, he gets 5ks from story mode and 7ks from his own Elite 1.
Right.
Elite 5, do they give like 10k, right? And then it locks you out from E1, right? So you do E5, you get 5k from story mode, you get, and then you get like, what would you get now if you were doing E5? So that would be like 10k. So you'd get 5k and 10k, so you'd get 15k. You know, that's the sum of everything you'd get, and you'd go like that.
I think it's an interesting idea, but I think it might be counter to their design. But I will say, regardless, with the addition of E17, I don't want to see it stay the way it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe.
Like,
well, I mean,
if the difficulty, if the lockout is still like one lockout for story and then one lockout for E1, E5, E10, E17, are you kidding me? You know what I mean?
I mean, at the same time, if you have multiple lockouts, you're disconnecting. If you have multiple lockouts, like, would we also have to go in E5 to get some distillates?
Well, you wouldn't have to, but the point is you could.
I don't know.
No one makes you go into story mode, right? You can just do E10 and be done for the week. No one makes you do it.
For itemization, for efficiency, it's always worth it. But, you know, in terms of gameplay,
right?
Not so much.
But the point is, like, okay, what if all of the elite tiers had its own lockout? Would you every week go do E1s as well? That's a legit question. If every elite tier had its own lockout right now, would you be doing E1s and E5s on top of E10s?
I don't know.
I think people do story mode because it's quick. You don't have to try. It's got a decent amount of distillate for like no effort. But if E5 and E10 were separate lockouts and so was E1, when your group finished E10, would you guys seriously all go back and do E5 and E1 as well?
They exactly had the same problem in WoW at some point. There was a raid that they released back in Wrath of the Lich King, and basically the raid had 10-man difficulties, 25-man, and then like normal and hard mods.
Right.
And the thing is that for the gearing up, actually many people were doing 2, 3, or all 4 of these difficulties in a single week, because the gearing up and the currencies were worth it. And actually those, like these raid tiers were scratched almost immediately after the next raid release, because like so many people burnt out on them because of this, because you had separate lookouts, and that was horrible. That was like really a fiasco, I remember that. It was exactly the similar situation that we have here. People were just doing all the raid tiers. If they give an opportunity, people are doing everything, and they get easy loot, and then they just burn out, you know?
Right, right. Well, I think the same thing is true for. I think the same thing is true as far as like the weekly lockout, right? It helps prevent the burnout.
I guess, yeah. I mean, my idea was like two times a week. Well, it's not that as horrible as like daily in TSW, right? But I mean, if they bring us back the missing raids, I'll be fine with one per week. That's okay.
Right, right. If you
they
have
bring
3
back
raids and you can do
the
them once
raids.
per week, that's still like.
That's
you know.
okay. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, that's yeah. I agree. I agree.
Right. Okay. Oh, I guess I'm disconnected.
How do we think the or do you have any opinion on the dungeon like rebalance loot? I think it looks good to me. Since we're talking
Very
about
juicy,
the rewards and stuff.
I'm still not like I think I won't ever approve how they did the agents in how they put the agents in the tiers instead of having a scaling drop rates for the agents.
Right.
They made it so they only drop in your highest. I don't like it for various reasons, but well, I mean, I'll live with it. That's okay. That's the only like, I'd say.
Well, it's
that's fine.
Okay.
As I said, I'll live with it.
I feel like I understand why, but at the same time, when your top tier only has 1 tier in it, it feels very punishing for the top end, right?
Kinda.
Although, I mean, I guess that's I'm doing the same thing everyone else does. I'm mentally thinking that like the E14 through 16 is 3 tiered. It's just 1 tier, right? So does that mean that everyone currently only gets an agent in their
highest tier? Yes.
Because
highest
your highest
IT
tier. Your highest tier is only 1 tier now.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Whereas before it was like within 3. So now it's literally
Yes.
just your highest tier.
Yep. That's it.
I mean, on the one hand, I get it. There was a massive problem with people just speed running E1s nonstop.
Scaling drop rates. Why not? Making them super low for E1 and then boom, boom, increase them a bit more.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. That's how I'd like it to happen. That's
wonder if
most
it
of
is
what.
scalable.
That's how other games do it. You know,
Yeah,
scaling
but
drop rates.
considering the percentage chance was already like 0.01, maybe it's hard to scale it down.
No, but scale it up, not down. You know, with difficulty, scale it up.
No, but
Why
I'm
not?
saying, okay, they have them scaled how they want to drop, which is very rarely, right? So then how do you scale that down further if you want the drop chance to stay the same at your highest tier?
On the top? Oh.
You know what I mean?
Well,
then how do you scale below 0.01 is my question. Like,
I mean, just how you scale any percentage, just divide by 2, by 3, by whatever.
Well, the drop chance in E1 for you is going to be 0.0000000001.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I don't know if it's the good thing that the intended drop rate is that low, because those agents, the old agents, aren't really even that good anymore at this point because of the power creep.
A lot of them aren't that good. Like
none of them is best in slot. None of them.
Yeah, Nasir's not good. Andy's not good.
So like, these agents are nice when you get them because you resell them. You get a lot of muff for them. That's all they're nice for.
Yeah. Well, they're nice because and they resell because they're rare.
Yeah. But,
right.
Like, if you increase the drop rates a little bit on the highest tiers, they'll drop the price on the market. Why not? Just like, you know, it's fine.
Well, I wonder if it's more like, because the whole agent thing is like a collecting thing, right? Like, it's like a collecting side game. So I wonder if it's less about the fact that it would It's
I mean,
almost like
Dungeon agents are.
it's almost like you want them to be rare so people buy booster packs. Like that's a monetization thing potentially, right?
Yeah,
Not
but
about the
like,
auction house price, but about the fact that
yeah,
if you can't get it playing a dungeon very easily, you might just buy the booster pack.
true. But look at the other booster packs. The agents for them are way more accessible. Like the new Dawn agents, you just get them from. Well, that I
Well,
mean, they're
some
kind
of
of rare,
them,
but you can buy them as well. But usually they're cheaper. You know, they're not
but isn't that when they
as
started
rare.
introducing booster pack only agents though? Because
Yep.
that wasn't the
Yep.
case before. I think
Yeah.
that's the difference. Is now instead of having it as a low drop in a piece of content, it's not dropped in content at all, right?
And you know what? I'm really not a big fan of that. Booster exclusive
I feel like
agents.
we moved into the monetization topic.
Yeah, true.
We just like slid into there, which is fine. But I do think sometimes you have to like think about these things from different angles, and there's like one angle is they could drop more and their auction house price would drop or whatever, but I think probably the more business reason that they don't do that is related to the booster pack sales.
Maybe.
I mean, look, it's been a year since the Freemasons booster pack launched, and those agents are still not on the Hexcoin vendor.
Yeah, I'd really like to see them there, actually, you know?
Yeah, because I could buy one.
400 hex coins. Yeah. I've got some coins waiting.
I have enough Hexcoins now to buy
Same.
one.
Same.
Like, I'm only missing 2, by the way. I'm missing 2 agents.
Same.
In the game.
Same.
It's from Freemasons. And it's just
Yeah,
like...
I'm not gonna play more casino roulette with the more booster packs. I've got coins. Screw it. It's enough. I've been buying too many.
I think what was said about that was that it's not actually in the developer's decision. It's like a marketing decision. It's like not like the dev crew, not Revel or anybody. But I think what was said was that there most likely is a sort of internal metric that had to be hit before they put them on the vendor, which makes sense, right? You don't want to put them on the vendor too soon, because then people would stored up hex coins from like the first booster pack sales or something, right? Yeah. You want to give your product time to be sold and generate revenue. I get that, but it's been a year.
Yeah, that's a while.
If it hasn't hit the metric yet, it's probably not going to. You might need to rethink something, right? That's my viewpoint, anyways. If it hasn't hit the metric, they need to do something different.
The agents were kind of super bad. Like, if you want to make us buy agents, make them good at least. Sorry, but they were kind of bad. Like, they give heal rating. I mean, the rebalance is here. That's nice, but before the rebalance, no healers in the game.
By the way,
sorry, but...
I called that shit. I called that shit when those agents came out. I was like, "There's heal rating on agents for a reason. There's something coming. I didn't know what it was, but I was like, there's no way there's heal rating on agents for no reason." And now it doesn't make sense.
Arguably, please just remove the like shotgun plus heal rating agent, or like pistol plus. Please, come on. Hammer and heal rating. What is that? Remove that. Come on, like what the fuck is that?
Okay, I had a theory about that. And it may not turn out to be true, but my theory was that potentially they might come out with a piece of content that actually requires like people to have healing. Whether it be like a new zone or just a new something like Dark Agartha was a new activity, right? Occult Defense was a new activity, and you need different things for them. They require different things out of you. So my thought was, aside from the rebalance, is what if slogging through the Congo when it comes out means you need healing regardless of your weapon? What if you're constantly taking like filth bio damage or something and you constantly have to heal yourself? You know what I mean? Like in solo content, right? Or like Dark Arth is solo. Occult Defense can be a group, but you can also solo. You know what I mean? So my other wild idea was maybe there's a piece of content coming that might require you to have a hammer and also healing, right?
Yeah, I guess.
It's possible. I'm not saying it's super likely. I'm just saying it's
well,
possible.
Like, I guess you can now, after the rebalance, you can kind of grab a healing offhand, you know?
Right?
Although, no, I mean, 650 or whatever heal rating aren't gonna change that much. Well, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, to be fair, most agents aren't terribly useful, right? There's a ton of agents, and there's the OD ones that are like +% damage to a certain type of monster are all useful to own just for if you run into that monster. That's probably the largest accumulation of usable agents is the OD ones, right?
Yep.
Beyond that, you just run whatever the one that's best for your weapon, and then like what, Oleg or the Quartermaster?
Depends. Yeah, Codemaster, Oleg, or the New Dawn agent for your main hand.
Which New Dawn agent?
New Dawn agents like 7% weapon plus
Oh
crit
yeah,
power
that's
agents.
what I meant. You do the +% damage. You do your weapon one, which is usually the New Dawn one, right? And then it's either like Oleg or Quartermaster.
Sometimes Sarah Skilly.
Right. But that's okay. So if you take out the defense ones, that's a really small batch of useful agents, right? Compared to the 64 that are there, that's really small.
Min-maxing goes. That's how min-maxing goes, you know. That's how it is.
But like most of the agents are fairly useless.
True.
I guess you know what? I should. That's technically a DPS limited view on it, though. Like there are agents you would use as a tank, especially now. I think, right?
Well, bad news. With the rebalance, the HP agents are kind of worthless. I mean, you know, you'd rather want protection and glance or evade. But second bad news, evade has a soft cap higher than the glance. Evade soft cap is above 3 elaborate glyphs, like 500 above. It's at 5k rating. Defense is like 4.56, 4.5k basically. Defense soft cap is like exactly 3 glyphs, you know. That's kind of like, I don't like it. I feel like they should.
It kind of nerfs those a little bit too. Well,
they should raise the defense soft cap like the evade one, just by 500. Just let us slot that defense agent as well. You know, should do that. But well, that's another topic.
Segue into the tanking and healing then. I think it's looking, better than anything we have on live for sure.
Yep. I still have my own problems with the current system. I'll just talk about the issues I have right now, because there are many other good things that I'm not gonna talk about, but like I'm gonna talk about things I don't like. That doesn't mean I don't like the rebalance. Okay.
Okay.
With that being said,
fair.
What I'm not a big fan is the irrelevancy of DPS and energy values and aggro in general after the rebalance. We tend to, like, now the new paradigm is basically to get rid of the aggro almost completely. Like, I've seen tanks keeping aggro with just basic spamming to like, I'm not joking, huh? That's how it is. It remains to be seen if this is still possible with agents and stuff, you know, on live. I don't know yet. Probably not. I think that's not possible.
I have a question.
But still.
Who are you seeing basic spam intentionally and not working? Because I had someone basic spamming and I ended up dying by pulling aggro more than a few times.
Oh, okay. Well, then maybe it was a limit test case. I've heard someone saying that at some point, you know.
Now, granted, I think I was using sword. I might have been bursting pretty hard.
Maybe.
Well, and also, okay, I think it's more noticeable in like Darkness War, because you have ads, right? I'm much
that's
more
also
likely to get
one of the
dead in
problems.
Darkness War.
One of the problems I have with tanking are ads and some other mechanics in general. Basically, to set it up, in TSW we had exploits with people in the last boss of Darkness War using Provoke Confuse. Remember that one, right?
Yeah, you just flip them back and
Yes,
forth.
yes. At some point, Funcom started to really dislike it. So what they did was to basically make the bosses always finish their cast before
Right.
swapping aggro. The unintended effect that it brought to the game, and a very bad one in my opinion, is that when you have ads, they queue up their auto attack on someone, and even if
Yes.
like a tank provokes, they still finish their attack on someone. And I feel like this is very, very bad in like it's a huge nuisance to the fluidity and to the flow of the game. It's supposed to be an action game, and it feels like the ads don't care about what you're doing. They finish what they want. That's not reactive gameplay. That's not like you can't do anything about it. They just finish their auto attacks, because I guess internally in the code, auto attacks are like any cast. Like everything is cast or something like that. I don't know. And this is how it works now.
I think
and,
the only way you get around that, right, is like something like Evulsion.
Yeah, well, because that CCs the ads. That stuns them. That makes them move. That's different, you know. That's why you grab them. But like, use the agitator gadget on an ad.
Right.
Like on the Flappy New York, like Flappies in New York E17 or New York Raids. Like sometimes they run after someone for forever before they explode. That's one of the issues, and that's kind of shame.
Even if it's the tank. I've had tanks that like started running too soon. It's like, dude, run back at the bird. It hasn't exploded yet.
Because and that happens because the bird has his auto attack queued on you, you know. It has to finish it unless you like get really far away, and then it gets wiped from the queue, you know, and then it explodes. But if you're close enough, it will want to chase you and release the auto attack which is queued, you know. And that's super annoying. That's horrible. That's horrible. That's a nuisance for the game.
I also will
really
say,
nuisance for the game.
As someone that had a character in the preview week, that the ads that spawn out of nowhere like to target the lowest player ID around, especially the oldest player.
Yep.
We found this out with lots
Dog
of
regionals.
testing in regionals, like
dog regionals. Yes.
Dog regionals like the most, but it can even happen. It's less likely in Flappy regionals for whatever reason, but it can happen in other ones too. But it's super noticeable in dog regionals. But it's not just the dog; it's anything that essentially gets summoned into existence, right? So, for example, the number of times that I have been chased and/or died to a Cobb ads on the Darkness War Boss 4, because they spawn right out of nowhere and go, that's the oldest character around, let me go eat him, and all of a sudden 4 Cobb are chasing me around, right? Even though the tank's sitting on top of them, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like sometimes you ground pound, and they still kill the auto attack on the DPS, and they kill the DPS, and then they turn on the tank because he ground pound. But come on, please.
So the solution is you have the oldest player tank.
The solution is Funcom rolls back that change that they made to provoke confuse, or they do something different. You know?
What I'm saying
just
is
rework this.
The in-game solution to that has been like, if I tank, then those ads will never chase a DPS. They'll always spawn and go to me. If I tank the dog, I will never lose initial aggro to anybody. Like you could DPS burst if I like flub my rotation or something and pull it after, but you're not getting that instant like the dog spawns and chases someone. Not if I'm tanking. It's always going to go to me. But if I'm not tanking, it's always turned its nose to me and tries to eat my face.
Pretty much.
Which is a problem because the tank can't do anything about that.
I mean, using a barrier to get initial aggro, that's only the only thing that you can do. That's it.
Yeah, but even that will only work after I've either evaded his attack or died. Like it
No,
won't.
that's how we tank them. But I mean, well, that's turning into details. I guess it's not very
I can come
important.
visit your your regional if you want.
We just use rock hard and that works out. Anyway, back to the aggro issues.
Yes, yes.
Like in general, aggro for tanks. Like I get behind the idea that Nerval wants the aggro to be like more lenient now. He wants tanks from previous tiers to be able to hold aggro on tanks on like super gear DPS, right? But then he should rework the missing tanking talismans and stuff, which provide procs, aggro procs, hate, and everything related to aggro. Like go for it and rework it into some protection, some defense, whatever.
Right.
Because that's the only thing that tanks now will care about is mitigation. So go all in, like finish the job.
Sure.
That's how I see
I can
it.
get behind that.
And why not? The other thing is energy. There is one thing that they did well for energy is for hammer. They revoked if you maybe you can show percussive maintenance passive. The percussive maintenance that's something that should be as a mechanic thought for other weapons as well. It's the passive for pulverize. Basically, it says when you refresh your pulverize buff, right? It gives you 20% healing received for 5 seconds. That's huge. That's insane. And the more energy you have, the more pulverizes you spam, the more often you enrage, the more often you refresh this. That's nice.
Sure.
That's what I call, like, maybe in terms of itemization, you'd want energy to get this buff with a bigger uptime. That's basically sort of active mitigation. That's what it can be called. That's nice. I like this. But the other two weapons don't quite have this. Chaos kind of have it because the more energy now you have, the more paradoxes you'll be able to get from power abilities. And the more paradoxes you get, the more you'll reduce the cooldown you're in signature. But that's not really that strong. Like you reduce a little bit more often, but it's not anything huge. I'd like to have something like percussive maintenance for chaos and for like for shotgun. That would be very nice.
Well,
at least like something to improve the value of energy.
Distortion increases your maximum health. Well, that just increases your max health, not your incoming heals, though. I was thinking it did something similar.
There is nothing similar in the other weapons.
Yeah.
Nothing really that's similar.
Well, it feels like Chaos, though, is more around the whole Aegis of Parallelism thing, right?
Sure, but
like that's where its focus is.
In terms of stats, energy needs to have some value for tanks. That's what I mean. And we're not quite there yet, You're not quite there. Maybe in the future patches they'll rework some passives here and there. We're probably not done with tanking, I think. That's what I'm waiting for. More better value for energy.
I guess the more... Alright, you have to expend energy to gen paradoxes, right?
Yeah.
The more paradoxes you get, aside from proccing the effects, right?
Yeah.
The generic effect of paradoxes in the first place, which should be beneficial. But for example, Twist Fate, right? Every time you reach 8 paradoxes, you reduce your cooldown time on Twist Fate.
That's what I was saying. But and also said that it's not that huge. Like it's not something that will want me to grab energy at all costs. There needs to be more.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. There needs to be. That's not enough. Hammer has the same. Like when you enrage, when you spend rage, you reduce your cooldown on the signature. That's cool, but it's not quite there. It's not enough. Percussive maintenance is a great example, and I feel like similar passive should be, added to chaos and shotgun. Shotgun actually doesn't care at all about energy. Like the signature only is reduced when you reload, but you can just spend everything on basics and reload. So that's even worse.
Right.
That's how it is. What else?
I didn't think about that, but you're right.
The other thing for chaos, when you proc 8 paradoxes, you proc like doppelgangers or singularities, right? Correct. I feel like there is a missed opportunity there for tanks, because currently these two are only for DPS. Tanks don't care about like doppelgangers or similarities.
Which
I feel like
it would make sense if like the doppelgangers were instead like defensive doppelgangers. For tanks.
I was more thinking about actually adding Aegis of Parallelism as a mechanic when you proc paradoxes instead of being passive. So that people who pick up chaos offhand don't just do it to pick up a passive out of nowhere, you know? It's kind of weird.
Oh, I see what you mean.
And like tanking would be more active with chaos main hand, and you actually get Aegis of Parallelism from main hand tanking with chaos instead of just also getting it, granted a lesser version, but still gonna get it with out of nowhere just from picking up a chaos focus. I don't know, you know. There's maybe a little missed opportunity
Yeah,
there.
I think the only issue with that would be it would have to be massively rebalanced if you were to do that.
Yeah, I know. That's
Considering
why
it's balanced
I understand.
currently
Yeah.
around you having it all the time, if it's only up when you've procced the proc, that's massively different, right?
Depends on how you balance it. If you balance it like pulverize, which means basically up all the time, that's fine, right? Depends.
Well, I'm just saying, like 8 paradoxes takes a while to reach.
Yeah, but
like,
imagine the Aegis of Parallelism buff is like 15 seconds or 20 seconds of duration. That's okay.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
No,
I mean,
that was just an idea.
Yeah. I get what you're saying now, though. Like, you're saying, like, not that you procced it for, like, 10 seconds or something, but you proc it for a long enough amount of time that you should potentially be able to proc it again.
Yeah, but at least you'll need to actively hit stuff and play main hand chaos to benefit from it.
Right,
Sort of
right.
thing, you know? Shotgun. I still want blue shells to get removed from the game. Like, I don't know what they are for. They're useless.
Which was the blue? Is it armor piercing?
Yeah. Nobody uses them. Like, the
50%
consensus that
chance to
I
apply
had with
exposed.
Nirvel, we've been discussing about blue shells, and he made the passive, which is Munitions Expert, he made it put debilitated instead of exposed. It's the last passive in the 4th row, Munitions Expert, yeah. But
Right.
I'm not playing with it. Like, shotgun tanks are just playing with green shells now, and that's it. You don't swap out of green shells. And DPS, they don't play with the blue shells.
I'm actually kind of surprised that he didn't just straight up remove green shells from your potential shell if you're in tank allocation. Given
You mean
that
blue shells?
What?
Green shells are by default the shells you have in tank.
As a tank?
Yeah.
But
you want to
isn't
remove
that
them?
counter to the whole idea that the tank shouldn't be healing himself, the tank needs a healer?
Yeah, but I mean, you're not healing yourself only with the shells. They're not gonna save you. They're
right.
just like a small.
What I
bonus.
mean is, like, one of the main reasons Sword got as much attention as it did, even though this isn't a DPS rebalance, is because it was intended as an offhand tank weapon that would help the tank heal themselves, and they don't want that, so they like stripped chi overflow from Blade so that a tank can't. In the new meta, the new patch, a tank couldn't just slot Sword offhand, spam a couple sword abilities and just get a nice overflow heal all the time, right?
Yeah.
They're like, nah, we don't want that to happen. So I'm mildly surprised that green shells is
True.
something that tanks even do.
True.
I would almost think it would make more sense from the design perspective of tanks don't heal, healers heal. Wouldn't it make more sense that you were just locked into blue?
I mean, I guess tanks healing a little bit is kind of fine. I mean, that's what Nirvel thinks anyway, so, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends, like, how much it is or whatever.
But what I mean is that mainly in terms of the general design for the weapon. I feel like 4 shell types is too much. And the blue shells is useless for everyone. Tanks don't use it. And, like, let's be real. Nobody will tell you, oh, I'm gonna expose with blue shells. Who does that?
I'd be like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah,
no, I agree. I agree.
And I won't want to debilitate with the blue shell either. I won't like waste one passive slot just to be able to debilitate
Well, for that matter,
And then,
who uses
like, I don't
uranium
know.
shells?
What do you mean?
Who uses depleted uranium shells?
DPS. DPS use uranium shells in their rotations.
DPS?
Basically, damage dealers, they rotate orange shells and in purple shells. They rotate them when they stuck up their
if your
dot.
main hand shotgun?
Yeah, they stuck up their dot with the reds, then they swap to purples to proc, and then they swap back to red to restack it, and then they swap to like that's the idea at least. DPS are different, but DPS also don't use blue shells at all. Like nobody uses them.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. No one's using blue shells. Like that's not a thing that's happening.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm still surprised. Anima infused shells heal you for 3% of your missing hit points. I guess. Oh, that's why it's not as big of a deal. It's of your missing hit points.
Yeah.
So 3% of what you're missing, not 3% of your health.
Yeah, that everything got changed like that for tanks. Like pretty much all the self heals that still exist, which is not many. They are working out of missing health. Even I think
makes more sense.
I think the soloing passives for each weapon, like the first passive, in the passive tree.
Yeah.
They all heal for missing health, do they? Yeah, this one does.
But no, the shotgun passive is healing you for 6% of your maximum health.
Okay.
But
this one is capped. Yeah, this one is okay. Never mind. Yeah, the lycanthropic essence, which is the tanking neck. This one heals for missing health now, compared to maximum health on live. This is one of the examples. For example.
Okay.
Of things that got changed.
I don't know if I have that one. Let me see. Do you? Oh, my windows got moved around. Son of a biscuit.
RIP.
It's because I changed resolutions earlier, so now my windows are weird.
It's fine. You're the best at Tetris. You're gonna do it.
How did you know?
Everyone knows, dude. Everyone knows.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I have that next.
Just look at the fate.
Yeah. It's where are you? Signets, talismans. Of course, now I have to find it.
I just sort by name, and then I get by alphabetical order. It's Radiant. Radiant what? Radiant L. So get to L.
There we go.
Yeah.
The essence?
Yes. 4% for missing health. See?
Yep.
It got changed. Some of them are like this now. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, those are main problems I have with tanking, I guess. The rest is kind of cool. What I like for tanks, it was kind of funny. One guy told me like, "Oh, in New York Raid now, since you're playing with healers, it must be easier to tank now, right?" Oh boy, how wrong you are! Oh, how wrong you are! Damn, the shotgun rotation in New York takes like. It's a rotation of 30 seconds now. Wow. I mean, that's the rotation we use at least, but that's super cool. Like it really, you have the possibility to have like a big deal of work as a tank now.
Well, that's okay.
That's
so
cool.
someone visited one of my streams the other night and was asking about that, and they were saying that like tanking's going to be like too simple, and I was like. Face in my hands.
It depends.
Okay.
In dungeons are kinda easy. We've been talking about them, right? So, for now.
I think it depends on the encounter and the other people somewhat, as well. Though, I will say.
For raids, definitely it's gonna be harder. I can tell. 100%.
My point is. You can't get simpler than the sustained tanking rotation. A drummer can do it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, I'm not talking about like the crazy high end
yeah.
You min-max optimize the tank is now like impairing, cleansing, everything. I'm saying like if you just do a sustained tank, right?
Yeah.
That is the simplest thing in the world to do. Can you count to
Mhm.
4? Can you press 4 buttons in a row and then do it again?
Trust me, I've seen some people in random streams that were randomly pressing buttons. That was painful to watch.
Yeah,
Trust me, that was
hopefully they
painful.
weren't tanking.
Yeah.
But yeah. But what I'm saying is, from a mechanics point of view, I don't think there's a way to be simpler than sustained tanking.
I mean, in dungeons, for most of the bosses now, I'm gonna tell you, some tanks are just gonna spam their power ability and that's it. They'll make the healer do all the work. Can tell you.
Well, okay, this is the key. At least I think if you're not over geared for the tier, if you're not over geared for the tier, and I mean any tier, I think if you're at level for it, right, then I think it's very much a case of the healer needs to do their job and the tank needs to do their job, and there's probably a little bit of give for someone to mess up, but not a ton. Like, if the healer like flubs and then the tank misses a cooldown, you're gonna die. You know what I mean?
I think it's more of a dungeon problem than a tanking problem. I'd say it like that. Okay. We've been talking about dungeons previously. We said
yeah.
the dungeons are kind of a bit on the easier side now. I think it's
okay.
kind of more of a dungeon problem than than
I
a tanking
think they're a
problem.
bit on the easy side at E17 when you're max geared and you have people to know what they're doing. If you're not in E17, like it's the same mechanics, right? It's the same mechanics.
Yeah.
If you're like in probably E11 and you're just the IP for E11 and the people you're running with haven't been running dungeons nonstop for 3 years, the experience might be different.
Maybe.
Right? Like,
Possible.
I wouldn't even. I'll take that last one back. I've run dungeons with people I know have played for 3 years, and they still do some crazy, insane things that I wouldn't think I would see out of people that have been playing that long. So I would say that while I agree for a coordinated group, especially the E17 dungeons, when you're at the gear to do them, don't feel particularly hard. I would say for, let's say, in the randomizer, like if you just queued for E17, you're going to have a much different experience.
True.
Right?
Now that I think about it, the other concern I have is that that's gonna kind of justify the mechanics, the list I've made for different dungeons earlier,
Right.
And this is also why, in my opinion, mechanics should be like a little bit harsher, or at least like second tier of Nightmare could be justified with this. My problem is that, I mean, it's not my problem, is that some bosses, like the majority actually, bosses in 17, when you're fully geared, you can still do them without a healer. I'm not joking.
An E17?
And if there's... Yeah.
Without a healer?
Yep.
Because I remember testing that maybe like a month ago, and that was not the case.
You have no agents, you have no min-max builds and stuff, I can guarantee you some bosses will be done without healers. I can tell you 100%.
You think even with the new mechanics that were added?
Which ones?
They added those 2 new mechanics that they alternate what.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like a real tank with glyphs and stuff.
Yeah.
And 4 DPS just brute forcing the boss before the tank dies. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. And I can guarantee you we're gonna do it. That's also why I'd like to get some group healing introduced in Hellraised with Life Burn. That's also why I made these suggestions. Or more tank check-in Polaris, This is why this maybe should be ideas that should be expanded upon, because I'm not sure Nirvel will be happy if he sees us doing some stuff without healers, you know. That's
Probably
not the point
not.
of the
Probably
rebalance,
not.
but it's
I
yeah,
would say he would not be happy about that.
that's how it might go. I mean, maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong.
Like
But you
I
know,
definitely could see like below your max tier, but I do agree it's a problem if you can do it at your tier.
yep.
You know what I mean? Like if you can go into like if you're E17, it can
Hmm.
go into like the E11 queue.
Yeah, that's
And
fine. Yeah,
that's
that's
whatever.
whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's whatever.
But if you're an E11 and don't need a healer, or if you're an E17 and don't need a healer, like, that's a problem. That's not
I
how it's
think
supposed to be.
if you min max properly, that's something that's possible, and you know,
Yeah.
time will tell. Time will tell. We'll try.
Yeah.
We'll try.
Well, let's see what happens when it goes live and all that stuff.
But
I will say
mean,
this: it doesn't take much for because you're talking about like min maxing, right? And like making sure you have the right
Yes.
build and all that stuff.
Yep.
I can tell you from experience with people that have hopped onto the beta that didn't really know what they were doing. That if you don't pay attention or like you're missing like a one key thing, like you go from being a decent tank to like falling over dead nonstop. Like if you're missing a piece, someone got a build from Dumb Ox, and they didn't realize the build necessitated having the Dark Mysteries weapon that gave you the passive. So
Yeah.
they copied the build without the weapon, which means you didn't have a key passive because the build assumes you have that passive, right? Because it's from the weapon.
Yep.
And it's
Yep.
an important one for chaos tanking. So without that passive, like the one or two passives that were actually necessary, they were just falling over dead all the time. The similar thing with, you know how like they made it so a tank in tank gear can go DPS allocation and do solo content?
Yep.
Yeah, not if you don't slot your signature ability.
True.
If you don't slot your signature ability, you'll have a horrible experience. Someone told me they went to try like Duck Gartha E17, like in all max gear with the tank glyphs, and they ratcheted it up and all that. And then they're like, "This is impossible. What the hell?" And I was like,
Yep.
"No, I know it's
Signature.
possible. I did it. It actually wasn't that hard. Are you using the signature ability? What's that?" Yeah, okay. You gotta read the patch notes before you test. Like, it's kind of important to know how the stuff works. And legitimately, if you were in tank gear, tank glyphs, and allocate to DPS, a huge amount of your damage comes from that signature ability. That's the thing that makes
Yep.
it possible. And if you didn't put that on your build, right, like, you're just screwed.
Indeed.
It's pretty bad.
In regards to healing, I didn't practice healing at all, gonna admit. But I can still say a couple of things here and there. I mean, we've been talking with healers that did New York Raid with us. That's the kind of the main feedback I've got about that. Right now, at least for fists, let's take the example of fists. Healing is concentrated in the elite and in the specialty, which is what's the name? Invigorating Wrath, right? Invigorating Wrath is the name.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's kind of cool and not cool at the same time. Cool in the sense, usage of regeneration and Invigorating Wrath are like tactical when you need it, and between the availability of the cooldowns, you kind of stall. You kind of try to maintain the HP, but like you can't top off a tank with basic power abilities only. It's not enough. That's not healing for not anything, but that's not healing that much at all. And the purpose of these of the basic of the power abilities is basically to stall until the cooldowns are back, and then boom, you heal up the tank again, and then you stall again
healing.
With that's kind of cool. Like it makes the gameplay, dynamic.
What? It makes your heart beat when you're You're like, no,
Hey,
no.
you know, Levski likes it. You know what
Oh,
that
I
means?
bet.
You know what that means?
Yeah.
That some heroes are gonna sweat in New York E17. I can tell you the raid damage. The raid damage is juicy. Actually, like we had Ev and Levski as healers. They did an amazing job. Like I didn't have to potion any single time during
Wow.
our New York E17 kill. That did an amazing job. And they both said Ev was saying maybe it's like a bit overtuned for, but then it depends on who is the raid is aimed for. What's the target audience again? But
Sure.
Levski was so happy. Levski was like,
He really gets to stretch, you know? He gets to stretch.
Did you see how he took the aggro on the golem with wings and then he commanded over like filth and rocks?
Oh,
Damn.
yes. I saw that. That was great. That was great.
Yeah, that's all
So,
I have to say for healing. Yeah, one more thing.
Didn't he say something like one of the things was like kind of underperforming currently?
That's blood healing.
Blood healing.
Levski thinks that blood healing is not gonna be able to heal in New York E17. That's not gonna work.
Not heal the raid at all.
No, because blood healing, not necessarily. Like I mean, at that point,
as far as accessibility, it might be a problem, right? Like if that's intended or not.
Is New York E17 meant to be accessible to every weapon in equal amount? You know, maybe not. I don't know.
Right, sure.
Maybe not.
That's fair.
Maybe not. The blood healing is kind of maybe more focused on single target than AoE. Kind of lacks AoE. And in that matter, I feel like maybe the rebalance for blood should have focused more on shields rather than raw healing. I'm not a big fan in terms of feeling, you know?
Right.
I feel like shields would have been more exciting than just raw healing. That's my opinion, but well, it is how it is. That's all I had to say about healing. I think that's not much.
All right.
I said that I didn't try it, but
yeah. I finally found where the timer is because I didn't know where it was for most of this recording.
I guess you can split in 2 videos if you want. We can continue, or you can stop, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, so I think
you'll be able to split, I guess, right?
We'll probably stop here. Sure. We're about like an hour and a half, and then if you're up for it, I think we could probably do another one. Especially I think on the raid, because you guys cleared the raid in the beta. For anyone that doesn't know that already, and I can put a link to that on this video as well. But because you guys cleared the raid, I think it'd be cool to just talk about that in general. But we'll do that, I think, on like the next one.
Sure.
Because we're at like a little over an hour and a half right now.
I mean, if you got time, you can continue now, or you can continue another day, whatever you prefer.
Probably,
it's up to you.
Probably
I still have like an hour.
We'll leave it. Okay. We'll leave it for another episode.
All right.
So, yeah.
That's actually. I think that's actually better to leave it for another episode because tomorrow we're going back to the raid tomorrow. So that's better.
Right. So we'll have feedback next time. Next time we do one, we'll have feedback from your later attempts. I think that'll be good.
Yep. And I'm afraid it's spoiler mode kind of too easy actually. Not kidding. Like it's the raid overall. It might be too easy.
Yeah. There's been some discussion about that, shall we say? But we'll get into that.
I didn't say anything. I was just being insulted, but I didn't say anything. I just said, we did the New York E17, and then what? Didn't say anything.
So we'll get into that in the next session.
Yep.
Hopefully people like these sessions. We can do more of them. Do more with Molov, potentially with other guests that want to talk about Secret World things. But hopefully everyone enjoys this, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
See ya.